Hey there, beautiful brown girl family. I always forget to unmute myself when I am coming on here. But hey, y'all. Hey, welcome to the replay for those of you who are tuning into the replay, and welcome to the live for those of you that are tuning into the live. I see you all logging on and you are here and ready. So as you're coming on, make sure you go ahead and introduce yourself for us in the comments. Let us know where you are watching from. Also, let us know if this is your very first time hanging out with us on BBG TV Brown Girl Boss. Tag your friends in the comments and go ahead and share the broadcast so we can get everybody in here for this conversation that we have this evening. I am going to take my own advice and I'm actually going to go ahead and share on my so I can't even talk today, y'all. Hold on. My social spaces so that I can get my peeps up in here. So, hey, Debbie, I see you in. Let us know where you are watching from. Tonight, we are ready for a candid conversation. Our guest is ready to just really dive in and drop some gems tonight. So, we definitely want to make sure that we use this time for all we have, honey. While we have the expert in the room, we want to talk to the expert, okay? So you all be thinking about any questions that you might have for Dr. Thomishia, and we will be sure to get those answered, all right? So again, as y'all are coming in, make sure that you introduce yourself in the comments, that you let us know where you are watching from, that you let us know if this is your very first time hanging out with us. So you'll type first time in the comments so we can honor that. If you're always here hanging out with us in our beautiful brown girl family, go ahead and type hey beautiful in the comments so that we can recognize you as well. And tag your friends in the comments and share the broadcast on your page. So gonna do a couple shout outs and then y'all, I'm gonna need some help. Okay, so I'm gonna tell y'all about that in a second as well. So we have Debbie who is here from New York for the first time. So shout out to you, Debbie. Thank you for joining us. Go ahead and get your people in here too, love. And then we also have Angela that is here from Fort Washington, Maryland, first timer. So spirit fingers to y'all. So excited to have you in the room with us tonight. Okay, now let me tell y'all what I need help with. So usually Christina, our chief beautiful brown girl, is in the comments, but she wasn't able to be here tonight. So we are going to need you all who are watching to help us take notes. Right. So usually Christina will highlight what we're talking about and then, kind of put out points 1, 2, 3, and 4, what have you. So I really need your help with that tonight. So if you can help us with that, type me in the comments so I know that I have some folks who are pitching in to help out with our beautiful brown girl community. So hey Melinda, hey Christine, hey Eleanor, see you in here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, so while we sort all of those things out, let me go ahead and get my things up here so that I can let you know what you are watching, especially for our first timers that are new to BBG TV. So I want to wish you a good evening and welcome you to BBG TV Brown Girl Boss. This is our virtual platform that allows us to connect with other like-minded women who are on a mission to live their very best lives. We come to you weekly with programming that will challenge and inspire you and get the conversation going to connect with other beautiful brown girls. My name is Kimberland and I come to you from Pennsylvania. On tonight's show, we'll be chatting with Brown Girl Boss, Dr. Thomishia. During the month of March, we at Beautiful Brown Girls are focusing on renewal, rebirth, and rejuvenation just in time for spring. So tonight, we're going to be talking about looking at our little people through different eyes and really thinking about how we set things up when we talk about our boys specifically, but our children of color and how we really talk about them out in spaces and what we can do to really advocate for them. So if you are a parent, you know somebody who's a parent, you have nieces and nephews, or your goddaughters and sons, we need you in on this conversation, because tonight is really going to be about equipping you with language to make sure that you know how to truly advocate for the babies. Okay, so having said all of that, I'm going to say one more time, as y'all are coming in, make sure that you introduce yourself in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know if this is your very first time hanging out with us on BBG TV Brown Girl Boss. If you are always here with us, type "Hey Beautiful" in the comments, and go ahead and share the broadcast and tag your friends. Okay? All right. So here we go. Let me tell you about our guest. And when I tell y'all she is credentialed, honey. Okay, because y'all know we like to let y'all know we didn't just go find people on the corner. Okay, people have qualifications. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest, and I'm also going to share some of her work as I'm centering in on who she is. Okay, so just kind of watch along while I read about her. So Dr. Thomishia Booker launched Hey Carter Books after being disappointed in the lack of representation of Black boys in children's books. Her brand and books are inspired by her son Carter and focus on building self-identity in young Black boys. She set a clear vision to curate an animated series filled with happy Black children loving their happy Black lives. Let me tell you something. I'm going to say what I got to say about that in a little bit. It's okay. Hold on. Hold that thought. Because we really need to be free to live our happy Black lives. Dr. Thomishia's work is recently featured in the Netflix original series Bookmarks, celebrating Black voices featuring Jill Scott, Common, and Tiffany Haddish. She is the only indie author among the cast of celebrities and New York Times bestselling authors Jacqueline Woodson and Derek Barnes. Her book, Brown Boy Joy, was chosen for Bookmarks using a social justice education framework that focused on concepts of identity, respect, justice, and action. As a result of this project, her book, Brown Boy Joy, is endorsed by the Black Caucus, American Library Association, and Association for Library Service to Children. Dr. Thomishia has worked hard for the last 4 years, building her business from the ground up. At 9 months pregnant, she and her family sold books at the Black Joy Parade in Oakland. Okay, so even that hustle, all right. She tells stories of difficult lessons learned, self-doubt, and connecting with her community to get her message out there. Dr. Thomishia is a licensed therapist and works full-time as a healthcare administrator. She is also a part of the Black Literacy Collective, building leaders and activists with collective knowledge, a group of Black authors in the Bay Area working to decolonize educational spaces. Her education, professional, and lived experience make her qualified to speak on a variety of subject matters. So you all, we are going to welcome Dr. Thomishia, but tonight we actually get to call her Mishi, okay, because she's just hanging out with the girls tonight, all right? So let me go ahead and get her up here. Hey, beautiful.
Hey, how are you?
Wow.
Hi.
So excited to have you here tonight, and really got excited when I was reading your bio. I had to bring it back in. Sometimes I get a little too excited, but so happy to have you here in this space and to talk about all the things. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here amongst these beautiful brown girls and just excited to be in conversation tonight about something I'm really passionate about and it's very important to me.
Yeah, for sure. So I know I read a little bit about why you started Hey Carter Books. What else can you share with us about that journey? Like what triggered it? And then what did that process look like for you to even bring this into fruition?
So when I was pregnant with my son, it was a struggle for me. Just the process and the journey to becoming a first-time mom. I wasn't ready, or at least I didn't think I was ready, right? I actually remember my best friend telling me when I told her I was pregnant, I was crying, and she's like, "Okay, well, let me know when I can say congratulations," and I'm like, "I'll get there." So it was just a difficult time, and prior to that, I had really only written in academic spaces or in private in my journals and things like that. So I turned back to writing because it was just a very sort of a painful introduction into motherhood. But I turned to writing during that time to just express myself. And it actually started off as a blog where I was just talking about some of the things in motherhood that were, a shocker to me as I was, pregnant and coming into this new space. And, after I had my son, I really felt that I needed to be a part of changing narratives. Although my introduction into this field of being an author and a writer for children, I really have been planting these seeds along the way. My journey as an author is really more of a gardener, right? I've been dropping these seeds and they've been blossoming along the way. So, my doctoral work on looking at colorism and just that internalized bias against darker skin. Also, I used to work in early childhood mental health at a counseling center where we were really focusing on the 0 to 5 and, seeing young children come in with different hair, wanting different hair and different skin than they were born with and, supporting them in that process. So all of those were sort of the seed planting that I did, that's sort of the culmination of what is now Hey Carter Books. And just that passion. When 5 days after my son was born, Philando Castile was murdered, and it impacted me just like all of the other Black lives that we have unfortunately lost. And it propelled me wanting to focus on just changing narratives and really just elevating Black joy as much as possible.
Yeah. And, I think about all of these times, but especially over the summer when we had the huge social unrest and the huge movement of how many times we watched the murder of George Floyd over and over again, right? Yes. And if we think back to all of the situations, whether it be Philando Castile or Sandra Bland or Trayvon Martin or Tamir Rice, like how many times did we see those images over and over and over again on the media, and couldn't really access that Black joy? Like that's not what's being spread far and wide, right? We're being characterized in these traumatic lights and lights that center us in sorrow and being victims. And while this country definitely has done a great job with that, there is so much Black joy to spread that we just don't get a chance or make a chance to make that transparent.
Absolutely. I mean, during that time, I think the worst part of that was we were trapped in the house. I mean, we were inside. There was, a pandemic going on. And so timelines were filled with that. And, truthfully, society loves to push our trauma in our faces. They love to highlight, the darker parts of our story. And there's so much more to who we are and what we have to offer. And that's really what, Hey Carter Books is about, is just elevating that Black joy and showing the world that our children, they're happy.
Yeah.
They're happy. They're living their happy Black lives. And that needs to permeate in abundance.
So how do we, as we are saying, our children are happy and they are, how do we protect that Black joy and protect their innocence while still preparing them for this world that we live in and not stripping away their innocent and joyful view of the world and who they are?
Yeah, I think it's first, important to acknowledge that we are constantly exposed to the needs of what white children want and need. And we are exposed to their innocence, and we see consistently what it looks like to be a young, innocent white child. And so we have spaces and the world responds to that. our systems are created for them. And so it makes it difficult to really to see what our joy looks like, because we have these narratives that are constantly, being perpetuated. I really think it's about us allowing children to just be children and what that means. And that is so stripped away from our children. My son, when he was 2 years old in daycare, I will never forget this, and I always share this story, is just that I remember the teacher approached me very concerned, and she said that Carter was playing with Legos, and she was concerned. She asked me, did I play with guns in my home, because he was making a gun with a Lego. And when I asked her, how did she know my son was making a gun? And mind you, she's holding up a shape like this.
Yeah, an L.
An L, correct. So she says, do you play with guns in your home? And of course, my reaction is, do I look like I play with guns in my home? Okay. And, I said, well, how did you know? Did you ask him? And she said, well, he was making a gun shape and he was making shooting sounds, which was like, psh, 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 psh. And I'm like,
because the L is flying through the air.
Right. Not this rocket ship, not this, magical scientific sword, not this, anything. It had to be this gun. And mind you, I don't have a problem if he was playing with that, because that's part of his imagination. I think this story really illustrates that our children don't get to just be children.
Yeah.
They really don't. Their age appropriate behavior is often seen as aggressive. Many, many times. And there I was, familiar with the research, familiar with the experiences I would be walking into, and it was happening to me. And really, when we have our little ones, it's really a time for them to test boundaries, to test limits, to be silly, to act up. They are deserving of all of those things. And because the way that they are seen, they don't even get to do that. They don't.
I told you I work in education, and I was just so happy, like when we were talking and preparing for the show, because these are the conversations that we don't necessarily get to have with families and get to have in the context of how do we advocate for our kids, right? So hearing you share this story and all of your extensive knowledge and all the things that I was reading in your bio, and you knowing these nuances, I think about so many families that don't. They don't know what to say, or they don't know how to call out the things. They just know that it didn't feel good, but not really understanding where it could lead, right? Because even as you mentioned a moment ago about how our kids don't get to use their imagination, or they don't get to just play, right? And I can't tell you how many times I've sat in spaces and we have diagnosed little people with oppositional defiant disorder because they didn't want to play with Legos. They wanted to play with blocks, and we were playing with Legos right now. So because of that, you're defiant. When if it were a child who was wrapped in a different package, it might be that they're a free thinker and they're creative, and look at them, they're a little engineer. They're thinking about how to solve problems, right? But with our kids, they don't get that opportunity. What thoughts do you have about that?
I mean, so much. So, in terms of the kind of the first part of the question, and with parents, is that we need to be prepared to advocate for our children as they are walking into spaces that are not meant for them. They are walking into spaces that are not designed for them, nor do they really understand them. So, I have my son who's 4.5. We're navigating the kindergarten process, and we're taking our time to find the right fit for that. And I've gone to a couple of schools, and the first thing I do is I do this gallery walk to sort of look around and say, where can my son see himself? Where can I see myself? Because what that tells me, and that sends the messages, is this space meant for us? And is he going to feel like this space is meant for them? And, you know, to your point about the overdiagnosis of oppositional defiant disorder, which I definitely want to get into that a little bit more, is that when you have children who their behavior is not understood, they are going to be mislabeled in that way. So there was one particular school that we were doing a tour with, and I noticed it was actually during February. And I look around, I'm seeing all this red and pink for Valentine's Day. And I'm like, I'm not seeing any Black history here. Mm-hmm. And actually, when I ask about it, and I do want to say to parents too, is you have to, make your voice be heard, and don't be afraid to ask those difficult questions. And so I said, what's the plan for Black History Month? And she says, oh, we forgot. She said, we forgot. It was an oversight. Yes, we forgot there was oversight. So language matters, words matter. And, to me, that meant you don't see me, you don't see the Black children here. And I'm, there were Black providers there too. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? So she said it was an oversight. I came in the next day, and then they had written on a board, they said Black History Week, which was then reduced to February 26th to the 28th. So not only was it we forgot, it was an oversight. Now you've assigned the shortest month to the shortest week of the year to recognize our Blackness. And that's just a small example of, and for me, it shook me, because I know these are the realities, but it also made me think, okay, you are not going to value my children here. You're not going to be able to lean into who they are. And that's a problem for me, especially when we have educators or caregivers, providers who are so deficit focused, deficit focused. So, as I said, words matter. It's important that we really understand what our teachers and educators are telling us about our children, and kind of linking that back to the overdiagnosis. When you hear teachers describe our children as aggressive, hyperactive, out of control, unteachable, anything that is not from a success and asset-based description is completely we need to challenge that and find out, what do you mean? What is aggressive? Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that, because as soon as you start having people label our children with those words, that is the beginning where they're going to be correlating actions related to that. The treatment of them, the expectations of them, the accountability, all of that is tied into that.
I don't know. I know you saw my face, but
true story. 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago.
Shut up.
Yes.
I am not surprised. What I am is shocked that they actually admitted it to the point of, oh, we just forgot. And then after the forgetting, their attempt to rectify, well, let's just give them those 3 days at the end of the month. Like, wow.
Yes. And wow. I know, I walk into spaces, having the language and knowing what to look for. And then I think about, friends or, other parts of our community that don't have options, or have to send their children into spaces where they don't have an option to say, yes, my child can go here, or no, they can't go here,
right,
or whatever. There are tons of barriers to that. And it's just really, it's disheartening, of course. And I mean, like you said, just the boldness, the audacity to, but when I hear it was an oversight, it makes me really think that, my child would be an oversight here.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And that you can forget my child.
Absolutely.
Forget about all the pieces that make him so amazing.
Yes.
Because you don't even see us. You didn't even think. And mind you, Black History Month, I have issues with that period because 365, right?
Absolutely.
But at the bare minimum, we still not talking about the Blacks in February.
Right.
Wow. So you brought up this thing, right? That you have the language and you know the process to go through and you know the things to look for. So one of the things I wrote down on my sticky note here was awareness. What does it look like for us to be aware of what we need to be looking for or what we need to be listening for to know, okay, this is something I need to address? So starting there, then we're going to talk about how to do it. Okay.
Great.
How do we become aware for those of us that it's kind of just gone over our heads or we walked in and didn't even pay attention?
Mm-hmm. So I think, something you said earlier stuck with me of just like, when you feel it, if it doesn't feel right, if someone says something to you and you kind of think twice about that, that's your first indication that something is not right there.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely one thing that I encourage is to take a look at your school's discipline policies, see how they're going to be responding to your child, see what systems there are to support children as well, and have those conversations with children. And you have these microaggressions, right? What I like to call these subtle acts of aggression that are happening. And you feel them before you see them.
Right.
And I think the more you are in tune to what you're feeling, it kind of keys you into what's next for that. And some of the things you might look at, and actually some of the schools that I was looking at, they, even for young kids, for the pre-K and kindergarten, they have these, zero tolerance policies where they're going to be expelling children. Those are some of the things you want to be understanding in that language and thinking about, if my child is misunderstood, because really that's what's occurring, is they don't understand our stories, who we are, and not giving the respect that we deserve, what is going to be the consequence to that? And the more we can understand that, the more we can show up to that. I mean, little examples of this are, tone policing, when you have an educator who approaches you and says, I just don't understand why your child, XYZ. That's a complete deflection. Instead of this language of how can I be supportive and how can I help you through this process? So it really is, for me, as a parent, and I would say for other parents, it really is something that you're going to feel first. You're going to feel it. It's going to feel like, that's not quite right.
That's that, what did they say? Death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yes.
It's all those little things that we often label as feeling some type of way.
Yes.
And not really knowing what to do with it. So once we feel it, what is your advice then? Like I'm kind of like, I don't know about that. Like what should be the next step?
One, I would say to just prepare and do what you need to do to center to have that conversation, because, we want to protect our children, and absolutely that's what we should do. And I just read a comment that from Irma that says, truth makes the oppressors uncomfortable.
Yes.
And that is so true. So in preparing for that, you're preparing for what they might say back to you in this kind of push-pull. So I just say whatever you need to do to sort of center yourself to have that conversation, because we know when we show up and show out and advocate for our children, we're going to be met with resistance. So preparing for that fight. So I really think it's important that we are in conversation and in dialogue with our educators as much as possible, letting them know that our presence is known. Of course, this is... I realize that there are some barriers to doing this. So I definitely want to honor that not all of the parents that may be listening are able to show up in some of the ways that I'm describing, because I know we're speaking to a very diverse audience. So yes, prepare for that conversation and begin to question things, begin to ask things. There's a lot of assumptions made about our children, what they're capable of doing, what they're not capable of doing. There's a lot of assumptions about that. And that conversation is one of an understanding of how can we understand how you arrived at this place. You're calling my child aggressive. You're saying you don't understand their behavior. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that process. Asking about what are the supports for diverse learners, children that do not respond to having to sit still for a long period of time in one position. Children who do not respond to this colonized teaching methods. What are the structures that are put in place, and really coming from an inquiry space, but also being prepared that I'll speak it into existence. I hope you're not met with too much opposition, but we do know the reality of the world that we live in. It might not be perceived well. So that conversation is going to need to keep happening. And if possible, you're going to need to take it up and escalate. Change happens at the policy level. We might need to be advocating within our schools. We might need to show up at board meetings, make sure our names are at the rosters, let them know who we are. We are present. We are here. We are active parents in our children's lives, assuming that we can be, and that we're here to make change. And we want to be a part of that conversation and demanding that we be a part of that conversation.
I have an advocacy group that I work with. And when you mentioned school board, we have done some amazing work in getting people to pay attention to school board meetings, right? Because so many things are just slid in policy. For instance, I just hosted a forum this past weekend, and it was about an agreement with law enforcement agencies in a school district. And within that agreement, the law enforcement agency had presented it to the school district. And there was language in there such as, if a student is arrested on campus, parents don't have to be notified. That translators were not necessary if the student needs a translator. That students were able to be questioned in the absence of parents or adults at the school space. So the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund got a hold of it because a school board member saw it on the consent agenda. And if we know anything about a school board, the way that it works, the consent agenda means that they just kind of say, we're going to accept all these things without transparent discussion. So the school board member found it and said, we need to talk about this, and was able to get someone involved. But the community had no idea, right? So that advocacy and paying attention to what's happening, I can say prior to some situations over the past 3 or 4 years, I was super inactive as far as school board. Like, it was kind of like, oh, yeah, I guess you're doing a good job. Cool. Even though I work for the school system, right? So it really has been very interesting to empower our parents with this information so that they are really able to pay attention to what's happening and ask those questions that you're talking about. So it made me think back to when I mentioned the oppositional defiant disorder and the overdiagnosis of our students. So I know you wanted to get back to that. So go ahead.
I do want to add something that you just said a few minutes ago, just in terms of showing up and be able to advocate. 2 other things is, one, find your allies, find other Black parents or other parents in the community that value the same things, and you can show up together, especially if you're someone who's navigating the district process and being a part of that and what that looks like and speaking that language and things of that nature. So you're not alone in that. I think there's power in community, and sometimes you either have to create it and find it. So definitely do that. And then the other thing in terms of policies that I think are really important is trying to find out if your school has a policy on diversity and what is in that policy and what that means. And as you brought up, Kimberlyn, really making sure that you are aware what's in these policies and how you are going to be held accountable. I think sometimes we are very trusting of these systems, and we're kind of like, let me skim through this. Okay, that looks all right. Let me sign right here. And really, you've just agreed to something that is going to, humiliate, endanger, cause additional problems for you, if you're not familiar with that. So I think it's just important that you know what you're signing and that you ask questions about that, because you're able to do that. So just going back and thinking about just the overdiagnosis of opposition defiant disorder, ADHD, disruptive behavior disorders, in the diagnostic criteria, if you really, really break it down, it really comes down to, again, the adultification of our children, the looking at how they are just misjudged. So in opposition defiant disorder, it's described as this, pattern of behavior that includes that if they're angry, irritable mood, argumentative, defiance. So one, that sounds like an age appropriate, behaviors for kids. I mean, if you have kids, if you're an educator, they do show up irritable.
Yeah.
That's normal. Anger, we do want to value all the emotions that, children display. Argumentative, well, great, you're using your voice, right? So those patterns of behaviors in that diagnostic criteria, if it is looked at through an inappropriate lens or the incorrect lens, you're going to fall into that category. Our children, when our children don't respond the way that the teacher expects them to, and this is, of course, when we have most teachers usually are and white middle class teachers. That's kind of what the
80% of them white female.
So they don't understand our children, and we have been conditioned to devalue Black skin. So they're seeing our children's childlike behavior and categorizing it and pathologizing it by saying, oh, it must be angry, when they don't understand, oh, you must be defiant. And examples of this are sometimes in our culture, we have a more direct communication, and sometimes some of our teachers who are not Black teachers have indirect communication. So they're gonna ask questions for a directive. Little Johnny, would you like to sit down? That's a question that is asking a yes or a no response.
And no, I don't want to sit down.
Right, I don't want to sit down.
I've been sitting all day.
Right, because I'm over here. But that's an example how, oh, you're being defiant because you did not respond in the manner in which I said. But had this person directly asked that question or gave the directive, you might have had something else as a response. So the other pieces of the diagnosis criteria is that the behaviors need to be displayed more often than their peers. Now, if we are, again, looking at Black children from a lens that our behaviors and how we show up are unique or misunderstood, then yes, this defiant behavior is going to look like it shows up more than their white peers. So that's extremely problematic. And then just the last criteria of that is that it needs to be displayed in a place where, in settings of schools, right? And so of course this is happening in the schools, right? And we're not seeing it at home. So all of those sort of three categories really kind of push our children to meet that criteria, when really it's a lack of understanding of who they are.
Yeah. You said something about basically how we give our kids over to the education system, trusting that the education system is going to do the right thing, right? And I think a lot of that comes from not understanding the history of the system of education in this country, and recognizing that education was founded on assimilation and trauma and stripping Indigenous people of every piece of their culture, and then relegating them into this system that was going to assimilate them into whiteness, right? And I think if we really go back and unpack what that looks like, one would understand why you would say, we just can't trust that the school is going to do the right thing. So I appreciate you giving these explicit examples, because it really helps to be able to give that language again, right? So I heard you first say we want to pay attention, that self-awareness, pay attention to what we're feeling. If we feel something inside of us that doesn't feel quite right, pause right there and ask for more information. Then being able to really use the words to say, what did you mean by that? Right. And knowing that we know our baby's best.
Yes.
So yeah, he does. He runs around all day. Yep, he's a boy. That's boy stuff, right? I think about single gender education, and I had an opportunity to teach an all boys physical science class and an all girls physical science class. They were completely different. Like my boys, they never sat down. They're beating on the table. They having fart competitions. Like it was ridiculous. But guess what? When I asked them the information, they knew it. But school trains us to sit down and be quiet.
Yes.
That's something that's more that girls might do, right? So it's kind of like all of these layers that we put onto our children. And as parents and families, we're not realizing what's happening during the 8 hours that we have the kids and just thinking, oh, they're doing the best thing.
Yes.
Because they're the teachers.
And it's unfortunate because, as you said, the history of education, these schools were not designed for us. So it's a long history of, being put in a place and expected to have this colonized thinking. And really for parents too, when we have our children in these spaces and they cannot see themselves and the curriculum is not culturally appropriate, they're not going to be able to learn. They're really not. I see a comment here from Dana who says, they're always ready to label our children. My daughter and son was claimed to have ADHD and I had them on meds at first. But when I was like, why do they only act out at school? It was the teachers causing those outbursts. Yes, Dana, completely. We too often are looking to have children take the responsibility for the way in which adults are treating them. We cannot penalize our children for the systems, the racist systems that are built to oppress them. And when you have a teacher up there who is, teaching in this very colonized way in terms of standing up there and just, giving them the information. They're not including their stories in the information. They're not providing any variety in the way in which they're teaching it. They're not letting their voices being heard. They don't know who their students are. Yeah, I'm going to act up too. Absolutely. I'm not going to want to be here. And all of these messages tell our children that school is not a place for them. Right. So why would they sit down and listen? And first of all, our educators, I know we have a lot of great educators in the beautiful brown girl community. Not all of our educators understand that you're not up there to dictate and to give the information. You're there to make this an immersive learning process. And when that doesn't happen, our children definitely are going to have a behavioral response to that, and rightfully so. And we want to make sure as parents, we're not penalizing them for that.
Yeah. Irma has a question here for you. She said, are our children different, or are they just perceived as being different? Or is it a matter of feeling awkward because they're being taught history that they can't relate to?
Oh, all of the above, Irma. I would say, we do have different needs, right? We do have a history. We do have stories that need to be told. And children in general, I think we have to learn who they are, and we have to adapt teaching styles to who the child is as an individual. And that's really, really important. We can't, cast a blanket net on this is how we're going to teach all of the students in the classroom. We have to really individualize that. Let me read a little bit of she says, or is it a matter of feeling awkward because they're being taught history that they cannot relate to? Absolutely. I mean, especially when you're walking into spaces and none of the history reflects your history. It's either incorrect or it's not things that you're familiar with. And then you're expected to act accordingly with that. Yeah, you're definitely going to act out. I mean, it's completely, you hit the nail on the head, Irma. Yes.
All the things. Even with that history part, I was just thinking many times we pick up Black history at slavery. Right.
Absolutely.
Negating the fact we did not just grow out the ground. Like
No,
we
we did
came
not.
from somewhere, and the amazing genius that we had back in our native land, that's not being taught, right?
No.
So how dehumanizing is that for a
Yes.
student to be sitting in class and realizing that the people that look like them, the
Mm-hmm.
only way that they see them is in bondage. So talk
Yes.
to us a little bit about representation, because I
Yes.
know that, you know, that was really big about why you created Hey Carter Books,
Yes.
to honor that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Kimberlyn, so we too many times, the Black history starts with enslavement and with our trauma. It's filled with
Yes,
our trauma, and
yes.
we cannot start there. So definitely agree with that and want to echo that. In terms of representation, yes, it is about us seeing ourselves. And really, what it's about is preparing our children to enter into the world with a strong sense of self and knowing what is possible.
Mm-hmm.
I really like to talk a lot about just the neuroscience behind representation and being able to see yourself and just adding that cultural element. It's a requirement for learning. When children enter spaces that are not familiar with them and they don't see themselves, it feels unsafe. It does not feel like a
Mm-hmm.
place for learning. And because our brains are wired for connection and to look for the familiar, when we are not able to find that, our children cannot take in information. In order for information to really sink in, it must be coupled with the knowledge that you previously had, which is elements from your home, your story, your history, and then being combined with the new information for it really to stick for our children.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that those messages are reinforced and for our children to understand that this is a space for them. But until we're
Mm-hmm.
not seeing that, that's really not going to happen. But really, when it comes to representation, is we need non-Black children to know who we are. We need to set a precedent in the classroom for respect. We need them to know what our happiness looks like. And we need for white children to know our true stories.
Yeah.
And when they come up against these false narratives, that they are the ones to stand up against that. They need to be educated
Mm-hmm.
on what that white
Mm-hmm.
privilege looks like, all of it.
Come on, preach, sister. JR said, found this on LinkedIn today. Classrooms have always had both representation and positive self-images of white characters, but this has not been the reflection or experience of children of color. If teachers want to decolonize their approaches to reading, they must reflect on and refine the images that are projected and what they give Black boys to read.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So let's talk about Hey Carter Books, right?
Yes.
And talk about the projects that you have here. And I know that there are a few of them. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through some of the pictures.
Yeah.
Talk to us. Let's focus on some joy,
All right.
and how you changed the narrative with this platform, right?
Yes.
So you had this platform of being aware of all of this, and then decided you were going to carve out this lane to really make a difference in what we are giving our Black boys to read.
Absolutely. So, when I was building my son's library, of course, in bookstores, there's more options for what we can choose to have our children read. But, typically if I'm, grabbing a book, and especially now, I may go into Target or Walmart, for example, and try to find a book. I realized there were not a lot of books that had Black boys on the front and center. And even still, definitely the library of books with Black boy protagonists on the front has definitely grown, but it was very limited. I wanted to put Black boys front and center, and I wanted their joy to be front and center.
Yeah.
So the first book in the series is My Brown Skin, and really that book is about building that positive association with the color brown. Right? It's about loving your skin and making sure that children are able to correlate positive thoughts with the color brown. So the main character talks about how he loves his mommy's brown skin. He loves hot cocoa. He loves his teddy bear. And, there's so much to love about the color brown. And we want other children. When I was a early childhood mental health therapist, and I would have children coming in wanting different color skin, different color hair. There were
Yeah.
a lot of negative associations, lots of children being bullied because they were correlating their skin with things that are not, very positive. And
Mhm.
so that book is just reminding our children that there's so much to love about their skin, but also reminding all children that our skin is precious, to be adored, and so much to love about it. Then, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, so that was the first one. So
Yes,
then
yes.
went to next. I'm all into the storage, all about
Right,
the
right. So the second one is Brown Boy Joy. And again, focusing on skin color, really having that pride in who you are. And I definitely, yes, I identify as Black. I think a lot of us either identify as Black or African American. Also, my books, they're translated into Spanish because, issues of colorism definitely extend to, Afro-Latino folks, Latino, Latinx cultures as well. So just wanted to make sure that I'm sending that message. And you can see with the characters in Brown Boy Joy, there was a lot of intentionality about the way in which the characters look. I really wanted our boys to find themselves on the cover. And that really is what I love to hear most from parents, is that they'll say, my child opened the book and said, look, mommy, look, daddy, that's me.
Yeah.
Because it really is, I spent a lot of time working with the illustrator, really ensuring that Black boys can find themselves. And inside the pages of Brown Boy Joy, you're going to find just that. You're going to find brown boys doing what they love, which is, a couple of things are playing with dinosaurs and, also in outer space, but they're also gardening. Okay. Because we don't have to fit into boxes, right? So they're gardening. You will see pictures of them playing with dolls, in the story. I really pushed the limits of brown boys are doing a lot of things. Our joy is not all encompassing. So you're really going to see joy highlighted there. And then the third book in the series is called King for a Day, which is all about the things that the main character Carter would do if he were king for a day. And that idea really came from, not all of our books have to be about our past and our needs and our issues, we need them, but sometimes we just need children's books, and so that was my approach to that, really wanting to encourage children to use their imagination. And, it's a silly, fun bedtime story. At the end of King for a Day, there's actually some guided instructions around how to practice affirmations. All of the books are filled with affirmations. I really wanted to help parents, speak life into their children as they read to them. A lot of times when I'm out in the community selling books, I'll hear parents say, oh, my kid can't read yet, so I'll come back when they're a little bit older. And I'm like, oh, no, come on back.
Right.
We want to start reading really, really early, and we want to be speaking life into our children as much as possible, because as we've been talking through this hour, we are sending them into spaces that do not know who they are, do not respect who they are, and do not see their brilliance. And these books are really designed to counter those messages. Our children receive so much intentional messaging that doesn't speak to who they are, that these books are really designed to do just that. One other thing that I'll add with it is, lots of vibrant colors, especially for those educators and our beautiful brown girl community. Vibrant colors so they can help to identify those primary colors. It's written in rhyme, so to help with early reading skills, and really, really kind of focus on children ages 0 to 7 is kind of where they're highlighted there.
I love it. This is so exciting. So how can people get the books and how can they connect with you, right? So I've enjoyed learning these different sides of your authorship, but also your advocacy. So I think that several people are connecting here in the comments with that. So how can they connect with you? How can they get the books? How can they get the things?
Yes, all the things.
Yes.
So the Hey Carter Children's Book Series can be found on heycarterbooks.com. Also available on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and Walmart, and also select bookstores internationally. Whatever of those options are easiest for you are perfectly fine with me. I don't have a preference. I know it's always something that parents ask. So definitely heycarterbooks.com, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or Walmart. Aside from books, Hey Carter Books has products as well, so we have our Brown Boy Joy backpack, we have our Brown Boy Joy sunglasses, because we want our kids to be showing up to school representing who they are, right? We have t-shirts as well. It's a whole movement, so definitely get into that. And that can be the products can only be found on heycarterbooks.com. And the series, you can get all 3 books for just $25. And you can connect with me directly on Instagram and all social media platforms at Melanin Mommy. I love to connect with other parents. I love to hear your stories, what's going on, ways that I can support or help you navigate the realities that you have in front of you. Also on all social media platforms, Hey Carter Books, that's the handle on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. You can find us there at Hey Carter Books.
I am so excited. So I don't have any kids, but I know a lot of people who do. So
yes.
I am super excited. I think I just found Christmas gifts that I'll be sending out, godchildren and all of that, because we definitely have to, like you said, affirm our kids and speak life into them. Like that gave me chills with that. What if they don't take, our community doesn't take anything else that you said today, and you wanted to leave one lasting and enduring thing with them, what would that be?
I would say that it is our responsibility to show up and show out for our kids. And whatever that means to you, whatever that means for you in community, do that. And show up as unapologetically Black, show up as unapologetically the parent or caregiver of your Black child, and let your presence be known. And there is so much in our society that constantly dims the light of who we really are. And when you're showing up unapologetically, make sure you are showing them that joy, joy, that Black joy. We too often are overcome with the negativity and the trauma, which are, the trauma that we have a traumatic past, and that is part of our, we have traumatic presence right now. We really want to talk about it, but, just showing up for our kids the best that you can and advocating for them. And, don't be afraid to stand up for your child and let your voice be heard in whatever spaces, and really, really, really speak life into our children, because they need it. They need it.
Yeah. And while you're speaking life into them, speak life into you too, because, we need it. We're tired as the adults in trying to fight this fight for our kids, right? So we also need to make sure that we're speaking life into ourselves as well. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there. So one more time, y'all, okay, because we done found the birthday presents, honey, the kindergarten graduation presents, you just had a baby and you need to read this, okay? So heycarterbooks.com, we want you all to go over there, get this bundle that is there, again, only $25. Also, make sure that you go over to the IG spaces at Hey Carter Books, as well as Melanin Mommy, so that you can connect with Mishi and just really support her. Y'all know we are about support, so I want to see y'all flood all of her things, because we really, really, really want to tap into this. Yes, Melinda said even Easter, girl.
Yes, Easter.
yes. So I am just so grateful that we got to hang out tonight. I just really appreciate how how you again took this passion and really carved out this space for you to be able to fight, and especially for our little people, because they don't have a voice,
Yeah.
and we really want to make sure that we advocate for them. So thank you for
Yes,
being so amazing.
yeah, thank you. And thank you, Brown Girl Boss community. I have just loved your comments, your interaction, your stories. So needed. And this community is really awesome. I'm just thankful and humbled to be here. So thank you.
Well, honey, you are an official member now. Okay, so you're not going to be able to get rid
Yes.
of us at all. So definitely want to make sure that we stay connected. And I know we had a few first-time viewers, so want to make sure that you all are connected as well. So if you go over to our Facebook, we want to make sure that you've liked us on Facebook at Beautiful Brown Girls and joined our Facebook group at Beautifully Shaded. We also want to make sure that you take us up on the opportunity to connect with us on our VIP members network over at members.beautifulbrowngirls.com. That is our place free from Facebook and free from the algorithms, where we're able to be our beautiful brown selves. So we definitely want you all to head over there and make sure that you get connected. This is just one of the places that we share space. We've got so many different opportunities that we do Zoom classes and cooking classes and painting classes and yoga and sister circles and all types of things that we have. So you can find all of that stuff at members.beautifulbrowngirls.com. And we also want to make sure that you check out our merch, right? So I've got on one of our shirts here, Brown Girl Magic. So you can find that on our website, beautifulbrowngirls.com. And yeah, we are going to be back. We're here on Brown Girl Boss every other Wednesday, unless we have special episodes. So like this week we had two, because we've like got to highlight these Brown Girl Bosses, right? But we will be back not next Wednesday, but the Wednesday after for our next episode of Brown Girl Boss. And then we will have our next episode of Brownversations this upcoming Monday on the 29th. So to those of you that are new to our community, welcome. Y'all can't get rid of us. We're excited to have you. And again, Mishi, thank you so much for this time.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I look forward to officially joining the Brown Girl Boss community.
Yes, I'm here for it. Also, so y'all, on that note, we wish you all a wonderful night. We will be seeing you all soon. Bye, y'all.